Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back to Momo versus MTG. Today we'll be taking a look at another personal commander deck tech video on Etrata, Deadly Fugitive from Murders of Karloff Manor, a newer commander. So we have a Vampire Assassin for a colorless Endermere for a Death Touch creature. Face down creatures you control have pay 2 Endermere, turn this creature face up. If you can't exile it, then you may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. Whenever an assassin you control deals combat damage to an opponent, cloak the top card of that player's library. So, very fun mechanic. Cloak is new, introduced in Karloff Manor. It's basically manifest, except for the creatures have Ward 2 on them. So again, the idea of this deck is to swing out with our assassins, get as many triggers of the bottom ability here, and then create a cloaked army that are creatures in addition to hopefully permanents that your opponents control that are really good. Um, Again, this is probably more of a casual deck. I would say anywhere from casual to getting to mid-range, higher power. But for the most part, it's an engine building deck. Doesn't have come online fast, but it's very powerful in its game plan once it starts getting off the floor. And I really do like Etrata because originally I had the other Tatra as the commander back before came out. It fits in the deck in the 99, and I can still keep it in here. So I transitioned the deck over, and I think it turned out pretty nice. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. Start with the ramp package. We have all our talismans and signets, generic ramp, wayfarers, soul ring, in Demir colors. For the expensive mana rocks, I like to rock the Crowded Crypt and Midnight Clock. So Crowded Crypt will create a whole bunch of 2/2s once creatures start dying, which is important for a game plan, which I will touch on, which is pretty cool. Midnight Clock, again, is a free fill the hand back up kind of deal, and I do like that. Sonic Screwdriver is an expensive mana rock. However, it gives some evasion, and that's an important part in this deck since it is combat focused to get the triggers, and then the other part, of course, is the assassin tribal part. So let me touch on that. Why Crowded Crypt works pretty good making zombies is because we went down the conspiracy route where we have the 4 cards: Arcane Adaptation, Maskwood Nexus, Conspiracy, Xerograph, that all deals with creature types. So there are some assassins, true assassin tribal in this, but more or less we want to be making tokens and turning those token creatures into assassins. And not only that, it's doubly good because when we cloak our opponent's creatures, they are turned into assassins now. So those cloaked creatures are now assassins with the Maskwood Nexus, Arcane Adaptation, all that good stuff. So I think it was a nice fit here, and yeah, it's pretty cool. So let's take a look at all the things that help this game plan go forward. First off, we have some blink theme. Blue is a pretty good color for that, and there's a reason why. So we have fastest deep dwelling for 4, indestructible. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to one other target creature you control. Then return that card in the battlefield under your control. So the important part here, it says under your control, because if we blink a permanent, namely like the cloaked creature that we stole from our opponent, and it says return it to the battlefield, and it doesn't say under your control, your opponents will actually get that permanent. So it's very important to look for that clause here. And then the thing is, if we have a bunch of cloaked creatures, we could choose the best enchantments, artifacts, creatures from among them, blink them at the end step, and then we get them. So again, this deck is more casual, I'll say, because it's only as good as like your opponent's decks and can match speed in that regard, which is kind of neat, but is also the limiting factor. It's very similar to Nagath Rod from I think I forget the set, but Nagath Rod, which is the horror tribal, which basically mills your opponents and steals creatures that way. So it's a little bit of a different spin on it. This way you can get spells, instants, and sorceries as well. So going down the list, Conjurer's Closet kind of does the same thing. Then we have Primordial Mist, which is an interesting one. So beginning your end step, you may manifest the top card of your library. Cool. And then exile a face down permanent you control. You may play that card this turn. So it's another way, a backup way to cast these spells, let's say, not just the creatures enchantments. So now we can cast them. We have to pay the full cost, um, and timing rules and all that, but it's another option to do that, which is nice. Also, we're getting 2/2 creatures, more or less more assassins for us. Deadeye Navigator is probably one of the best blink options because Soul Bond is so powerful. Uh, because it bonds with another creature, and when it's paired, each of those creatures has pay 2, exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under your control. So another way to blink any creature, basically, even a commander, to protect it, or so many uses for this. Protect itself, like I love it. And then for board wipes, let's touch on that. Toxic Deluge, this is really open to you. I like to run Toxic Deluge, it's very good. Interesting one, it's not really a board wipe, but Ixadaron is for 5 mana. Enters the battlefield, turn all other non-token creatures face down. So not a lot of decks have answers for this. Namely, their commander, right? It's going to be a 2/2 creature. So it's going to be tough to rezone that or flip it over. So pretty good in that regard. And then added bonus, it's a big creature, equal number face down cards. And this doesn't matter for us too much since we have so many ways, right, to flicker and blink our own stuff to turn it face up, which not every deck has. And then the last piece is Massacre Girl. I think it's really fitting here. It's a human assassin, fits the theme. Also usually wipes the board, especially against token decks. So I like these options here. 3 is good enough for me. Counterspells, I run 4 in this deck. I'm not a big counterspell guy. You run whatever you want, but the ones I'll point out is Stratus Dancer for 2. You can morph it down and then megamorph it, right? So it's basically just morph, but it has +1/+1 counter on it. And it also counter targets, instant or sorcery spell. And then the powerful one, Kiru's Spell Snatcher for 4. You usually want to morph this and then put it face down and morph it. Because when it's turned face up, it counters a spell. And if it was counter's way, exile instead of putting to its owner's graveyard. And you can cast that copy without paying its mana cost for as long as it remains exiled. So really nice counterspell, gotcha, and then you take it. And again, fits with the morphing theme, face down creatures. Then we have Roaming Throne, just fits too good in the deck. One of these is nice. For the doubling effect, we choose Assassins. We get 2 triggers of the last ability on our commander. So very powerful there. It's kind of like giving yourself pseudo double strike. And then let's move over to the draw engine. So we have Baleful Strix. Again, if we turn this to Assassin, it's flying, evasive, death touch, draws a card, all good stuff. Black Market Connections, of course, is exceptionally well because all creature types, it can create a shapeshifter, changeling, with changeling. Draws a card, gets treasure, all good stuff. Binding of Thassa, these are more the engine pieces of drawing cards, right? Because deals combat damage, you may draw a card, so a couple of these effects are nice to have. And also pseudo goads your opponent's creatures to attack if able. Massacre Girl, I think, really fits. I have a deck on this. If you'd like to see it, I'll leave a link as a commander herself. But in her own right, in this 99, fits really well too, right? Assassins, creatures have Wither, and is a really good card draw option. Because it's either you're usually going to be drawing cards or getting through with the cloak mechanic. And then we have Reconnaissance Mission, right? Combat damage, draw a card. Those are good. And Kindred Discovery. So when the creatures enter or attacks, we get to draw a card. So nice selection of card draw. I think it fits pretty good. They have some good stuff here. Deluxe Dragster. It's just a nice fit in the deck for 5 mana. Can't be blocked except by vehicles. Not too many of that in the format. Unless it's, vehicle tribal or something. And when it deals combat damage to another player, you may cast target insert sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. That spell will be put in the graveyard, exile instead, and only takes 2 to crew. So our cloak creatures can crew this, and we get to cast a really good spell, hopefully. Fits the theme, and again, if it's an assassin, we're cloaking their top card. Tasha the Witch Queen for 5 mana fits really nice here. Because whenever you cast a spell you don't own, create a 3/3 demon creature token, which we will be doing a lot in this deck. And just is super synergistic, creating creatures for us to swing with. And then the other abilities, we can draw cards, exile insert sorcery from their graveyard with a page counter, and then we can cast cards with page counters on them. So really nice options here with this, and is a good commander in its own right, but just fits too well in the deck. Hoarding Brewlord for 8 mana is expensive, but has Convoke. But we get to tutor for something, and we can play it, and then our spells have Convoke that we cast from exile. So really cool synergy here in the deck. Um, yeah. And then let me touch on the lands. There's, you can run whatever land package you want, just some generic stuff, Cavern of Souls or Assassin Tribal of sorts, so really good land there. And then the lands I really want to touch on are all the lands that turn into creatures, like the Morph land. This turns into a 4/4. Mishra's Factory. Ink Moth and Blink Moth are flying, so they have built-in evasion, so they're extra good in this deck as lands, because we wanted to get those connecting combat triggers. Because again, if we have our conspiracy out, they are now assassins. And probably the best one is Mutavault, because we don't need that. It just becomes a 2/2 creature with all creature types, so works extremely well with our commander by itself, which is cool to see. Then we have some backup mechanics for cloaking and manifesting our own cards. Cryptic Cloak's great, because we cloak the top card of our library. And again, with our commander, we can turn it over if it's something really expensive. Or even if it's a spell, we can turn it over with the commander and still cast it, right? So it's not a lost cause. And we keep doing this again and again, and has built-in evasion on that creature, because it gets attached to it. So very good. And in Scroll of Fate's probably one of the best cards too, because for 3 mana, every turn you can manifest a card from your hand. It's a 2/2 creature face down, and if we're stuck with an expensive card, we cheat it onto the battlefield with this thing, and then cast it with our commander. So really good synergy there. Going forward, there's protection for the creatures we have. Some built-in protection is Changeling Outcast, right? Can't be blocked, so can sneak by other creatures, which is really important. Malakir Rebirth. Again, it's like a free slot because it turns into a land if you don't want the front side. And when it dies, returns to the battlefield tapped under its owner control. So good reanimation protection there. Cover of Darkness, you can sub this out, a little more expensive, but gives all our creatures fear if we choose a creature type. We choose assassins, right? Because we want to be getting through. So one of the best ways to get through in this deck. Lightning Greaves protects our most valuable target. And Open the Wonders is probably one of the best cards in the deck, right? For 2 island and X, target creatures can't be blocked this turn. Until end of turn, those creatures gain whenever this creature deals combat damage to the player, draw a card. So again, evasion and card draw built into one spell is very powerful. Kaito Dancing Shadow for 4. And again, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to the player, you may return one of them to its owner's hand. If you do, you may activate loyal abilities of Kaito twice this turn rather than once. Cool. So you can make something unblockable, draw a card, or create a drone, which will be able to get through on itself as well, because it has Death Touch. So all very good stuff. The Kaito is very good. And then we want protection for ourselves as well. So Propaganda is a fit because it is a bit of slower of a deck. We don't want to be getting swung out with mass tokens. It's probably our downside. So Propaganda is a nice fit. And Public Enemy is one of my favorite cards. Came out, Streets of New Capenna. For 3 mana, it goads all creatures, basically, to attack that player. So enchant the opponent creature. All creatures attack enchanted creature's controller, each combat if able. And when the creature dies, you draw a card. So it's value now and later. It saved me a couple times. Funny story. Was able to play us on an opponent. The next guy had to swing all out on him and take him out of the game. So it saved me at least another turn. So pretty cool. And then Whip of Erebos is the last thing. Has reanimation for the turn, which is nice for 4. But also gives our creatures lifelink, which keeps us around longer. So those are pretty important stuff. I like to have them. And in that ramp department, we have the Igma Jewel, which came out in Ixalan. I really like this card for blue, right? Tap for 2, only activate ability, so it cheapens our commander's ability stapled on her. Or more or less the morph creatures, the face down creatures we have, because that's what it gives it. And we can craft with 4 or more non-lands and with activate abilities for 8. And we do have a decent amount of them, Deadeye Navigator, stuff like that. And has each activate ability of exiled cards used to craft it. You may activate each of those abilities only once a turn. But whenever you activate ability that isn't a mana ability, copy it. You may choose new targets for it. So very powerful in this deck. Yeah, because we just get a ton of value with it. And then going down the list, Training Grounds is very good for blue. Very niche card, but fits really nice in our deck because Activate ability of creatures you control costs 2 less to activate. This effect cannot reduce the mana in that costs less than 1. So again, activate ability on the creatures it gives to us is 4. Take that generic off, it's just a mirror. So it cheapens our stuff by a lot. Really, really good in this deck. Then for removal package, besides the board wipe, we have Feed the Swarm, gets rid of enchantments, exile creatures, reality shift. Big Game Hunter's a nice fit for 3. It is an assassin. Destroys creature with power 4 or greater. Cool. Very good. And Agent of Treachery. Bit more expensive, but we can cheat that out. And we get to not only get rid of their biggest threat, we get to draw 3 cards if we control permanents, which the cloak creatures from our opponent's decks are considered. If we have 3 or more permanents we don't own. So, very nice fit. And lastly, commit and memory, right? Put target spell or non-land permanent on the owner's library second from the top. A little expensive, but gets rid of a problem for a while. And then we get to shuffle our library and refill up everybody. So nice options to have, which I really like. Then we do want to make some tokens in addition to cloaking, manifesting, all that good stuff, ours and our opponent creatures, because the more tokens we have, they are considered assassins with our conspiracy, the more triggers of our commander will get. So this might be the best one. Bitter Blossom, lose a life, make a 1/1 every turn. And again, the cool part with the conspiracy idea is, these creatures that we cloak, they come back as 2/2 creatures face down, but they are considered assassins, and those can go get assassins. So kind of can go off exponentially in that regard. So that's cool to see. Yeah, and then lastly we have Kaito, the Shizuki, right, for 3. So it phases out the first turn at the beginning of the end step, so it's built-in protection. You can also create blue ninjas, right, with this creature can't be blocked. Really good for the deck. It has draw card, discard unless you attack, so all this good stuff. So both Kaitos fit very nice. And then we have a couple tutors in deck, mainly Fabricate to grab the Maskwood Nexus, and if not, some other good artifact. And then Ringsight grabs any Conspiracy, Xerograph, any of those, Arcane Adaptation, any of those creature changing types. But then again, it can also grab some of our other win cons, which I'll dive into. Marie the Killing Quill, in conjunction with Ravenloft Adventure, both read, basically, whenever a creature and opponent tries, exile with a hit counter, which is very important for our sub-win con. Assassins, Mercenaries, and Rogues you control have Death Touch. Great for us. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a hit counter from a card that player owns in exile. If you do, draw a card and create 2 treasures. So, very powerful on its own, but with the hit counter theme, this is great to have. Etrata, the Silencer, the original for 2 mana Demir. It's a vampire assassin, and it can't be blocked. And we deal combat damage to player, exile target creature that player controls, and put a hit counter on it. So, creature removal, exiling, very powerful. And then that player loses the game if they own 3 or more exiled cards with hit counters on them, and this gets shuffled back in. We can avoid this, of course, by blinking it, which we have ways. But again, Marie the Killing Quill with a board wipe out, and her on the battlefield is going to exile a bunch of cards with hit counters. And then we give Atatra haste, and we can take, the most problematic player out. So, neat little combo there to win the game. But furthermore, if you have the full setup, if Atatra's out, hit counters, all that, and then you play Ramses Assassin Lord, good creature on its own, right? 4 mana, Death Touch, Assassin, other assassins get +1/+1, and whenever player loses the game, if they were attacked this turn by the assassin you control, you win the game. So in conjunction, we can take everybody out in one swing, which is really cool to see. Alternative win con. Besides casting our opponent's spells, if that doesn't work out, this is the surefire way to win the game. So, pretty cool to see. And then the rest of the cards are going to be kind of like win con-ish. So, Thieving Amalgam, right? 7 mana. Depending on each opponent's upkeep, manifest top card of the library. Cool. That's what we want to be doing. And whenever a creature you control dies, its owner loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So, if we steal a bunch of the top cards of our opponent's libraries, and this comes out, now we're going to start draining our opponent for a lot, and we're going to be gaining a lot of life. So, cool card, fits really nice. For some heavy hitters, Mind Dilation is a good one. I like. Whenever opponent casts his or her spell each turn, that player exiles top card of his library. If it's not a land card, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. So, of course, that fits extremely well with Tasha, the Witch Queen, right? Because if you cast a spell you don't own, you could also be creating demons on top of it. So very, very cool, very powerful. Going down the list, one with the multiverse, powerful hit. We can cheat out, right? During once each turns, you may cast a spell from your hand or library without paying its mana cost, right? And yeah, all the good stuff here. And then lastly, Portal to Phyrexia, right? For 9 mana. Each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures, and at the beginning of your upkeep, put 1 target creature from graveyard on the battlefield under your control, except that it's Phyrexian in addition to its other type. So reanimate their best creature from their graveyard every turn. So this deck is pretty powerful once the engine gets going. You can kind of snowball the game and does a lot of neat things. You know, you could run this as Assassin Tribal, but again, I think the conspiracy route is, a little more interesting. It does some cool stuff. There's some cool tech cards you can add if you go down that route. Grab a lot of stuff we need, and everything really kind of flows together nicely. Nice engine pile, commander here, with some cool tips and tricks. Neat little things you can do. Even Solomson Lacrum turns into Assassin later on, right? Ramps you, all that good stuff. So it's like a lot of the stuff here works in our favor, which I really like to see. This deck is a ton of fun to play. I got the test pilot because it's one of my newer decks a couple times, and would recommend. So yeah, hopefully this gave you some inspiration. If you were thinking about building Etrata, Deadly Fugitive, a different direction to go to with this commander. Yeah, and if you liked it, please, leave a comment down below, like know your thoughts, or something about what you want to see next. If you have a deck of your own, reach out to me. I'll take a look at it. So I am open for those. I like to view other people's decks. And without further ado, thanks for hanging out with Momo versus MTG. And until the next one, I'll see you when I see you. Take care.